Half-Life Echoes is a fan mod for Half-Life released in 2018. The mod almost perfectly implements the lessons taught in the first Half-Life to create a mod that looks official enough to stand next to the Gearbox expansions, but original enough to offer new experiences to returning fans. Half-Life Echoes takes place in the Black Mesa Research Facility on the day of the Resonance Cascade, and is played from the perspective of Candidate 12, a presumed employee of Black Mesa who is being watched by the G-Man in the same way Freeman and Shepard were. As for gameplay, this mod takes what is great about Half-Life and adds new aspects to it. It maintains the feeling that you were just a participant in the events occurring by showing various other characters struggling in the same way you are, with very few cutscenes. But the mod also switches up the gameplay in new ways that the original rarely covered, like introducing tight, dimly lit corridors infested with zombies, adding new aspects of a horror game. Half-Life rarely did this, excluding a few air vents. The combat has great progression and introduces enemies at a steady pace and supplementing weapons in much the same way. First, you see the enemies out of harm's way before being introduced to them in steadily growing quantities. The game does also feature a large amount of backtracking, which would usually be a detriment, but I feel Echoes' implementation is a best case scenario. The progression with enemies and weapons also extends to the environments. There is this glass tunnel overlooking a bridge that you return to multiple times, and every time you do so, the environment is drastically changed. Firstly, with the military making their way to the base, and later on with a large-scale battle taking place. It's a good way to extend the length of the mod without having to make any more environments, as well as being greatly satisfying to see previously peaceful environments being war-torn at a different time of day. There were some parts of the gameplay that I believed were quite weak. Near the beginning, there is this section where you have to turn a slow-moving valve to progress, while enemies frequently teleport behind you. This section can be annoying, as after you've thought you've killed all the enemies required, more spawn in and catch you off guard. I find myself becoming very impatient at sections like these. Another detriment is the lighting. Although for the most part the lighting is done very well to induce a tense and frightening atmosphere, it sometimes gets excessive, which can be annoying when you can barely see the environment you're in, especially when you're trying to participate in a battle. This situation is made worse with the terrible flashlight built in with Half-Life. Graphically, relative to Half-Life, this mod is great. There's lots of attention to detail, and some of the larger starting environments look great. There are indoor ponds, ceramics, and many employees going about their day. Black Mesa is full of interesting items, and there are references to other games, some more subtle than others. For some reason, this mod portrays Black Mesa as incredibly incompetent, something which is partially implied in the base game, but it is really taken to an extreme here, almost to the level of comedy, a huge contrast to what the game will become an hour later. The Resonance Cascade is an incredibly dramatic event, rivaling Blue Ship's level of absolute chaos at the moment of the incident.
It's too late. I can't do it. I can't. We'll never make it. Hold yourself together. Look out! What the heck? Get back! Ah! 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 Ah!
A great moment involving a Gargantua flipping over a monorail, and is followed by a scene where you are dragged through the aftermath of the incident. An amazing set piece that truly conveys the quality of this mod. There is a story here that does extend beyond just the Resonance Cascade, and it incorporates a lot of lore from later entries in the Half-Life franchise, and even Epistle 3. The story is quite vague, and can be interpreted in numerous different ways. It is told in quite an odd fashion, however, being told in ways reminiscent of cutscenes, which is odd considering how well the game was doing at adding story elements while the player is still in control. Many characters recycle the same voice lines from the original game, which can make things somewhat confusing and out of place. Nevertheless, there is still a lot of intrigue surrounding G-Man's motives, and it is definitely worth experiencing yourself. If you enjoy base Half-Life, then I highly recommend trying out this mod for yourself, as it can stand side by side with Blue Shift and Opposing Force in many scenarios. And remember that this game is completely free to download and play. Go play it and hopefully you won't regret it.